Hi, I'm a raging papist, and I was just thinking about some of the issues at the beginning of GamerGate and what was some of the original blowback that people felt about the gaming industry. Where did the anger come from, and what was the first time that you yourself may have discovered that games journalism is corrupt and that there's a narrative being pushed at you and all these things? For me, I think the first time I can trace it is the emergence of that illustrious game Gone Home. Um, and all the arguments that were raised against it by gamers as to why it's not a game, and it was essentially a long, elaborate dance that that gamers and SJWs on the opposition just danced around. Nobody wanted to address the actual issues of the game because everybody was fearful of where that may lead to. For instance, cases of bigotry or homophobia or any of those things. But I think as a member of GamerGate, as a movement, I think we have to be very careful and very clear on what we're actually saying, that we actually stick up for free speech, and that you should not be discriminated against for your feelings one way or the other on any issue. You know, you deserve to have your side give its say. And in the marketplace of ideas, people will either gravitate or they will reject, and that's the end of that. But I recently read an article. It was pointed out by V, who you should check out his channel. He's a great guy. Um, about the new Mad Max film coming out in just a couple days called Mad Max Fury Road. And it was a movie that I was really looking forward to for quite some time. I remember when I first saw the trailer, I thought, oh my God, that nostalgia pang in my gut hit me. And I'm like, a new Mad Max film? Like, obviously they're going to mess it up somehow. But what if they don't? Like, this looks really good. The new art style is really great, and they're resurrecting it. And Mad Max was always one of those iconic characters, from the 80s and early 90s that you gravitate to. He was a very awesome hero. And essentially, I've put the article in the description if you want to read it. But what the article tells us is that basically everything you've heard about Mad Max Fury Road is a lie. It's not an action movie. It's a feminist action movie. The movie itself is actually not even about Mad Max. It's actually about his female counterpart, who does just as much action, fighting, and kicks just as much ass as he does, and how this is a big female empowerment thing. In fact, the entire plot line basically is about trying to find a matriarchal society where these women can be free from this evil, apocalyptic slaveholder who likes to milk women and all kinds of really debauched sort of activities. But the thing that, so that basically killed the movie for me right there. And if it does for you, I'm sorry, but it's the freaking truth. But the thing that perturbed me was at the end of the article, the woman just flat outright goes on about, she says that we know that guys don't want to see a feminist movie, right? We know that people in general don't want to see these radical female empowerment films. So we conned you. I mean, we actually conned you. The trailer itself only showcases very little. All the things they showcase are mostly Max, with only a couple glimpses of the girl, very little action, and mostly action sequences alongside their two faces, and that's it. And she says the idea is that because we cannot push feminism on the majority for some reason, in their ignorance, they refuse to accept it. In their bigotry, they refuse to adopt it. So we will slide it into the movie for them because we're doing them a service. They'll come around eventually, and we're just going to be pushing it in all their products until eventually they capitulate. Well, that's false advertising if I ever saw it. But the parallel that I would draw then is to Gone Home. And if you haven't played it, I'm sure you've heard of the controversy. It's not a game. You can beat it in 3 minutes. There's no action. The entire thing is a lie, basically. But it's important to realize that the marketing for it is pretty damn close to how Mad Max Fury Road has been marketed. if you recall at the time, even the cover of the film, or I'm sorry, the cover of the game is a haunted house with a light on, right? It's like they were telling you, and what they showed you in the game was you're a young woman returning home, and the house is empty, and it's scary, and you're finding out what happened to your family. Now they knew what the average gamer was going to anticipate. This is a horror game, right? This is a creep fest. Uh, you know, things are disheveled. The TVs are on with static. Where is everybody gone? It's a dark and stormy night. All of that. They knew that it was a horror game, or that you would perceive it as a horror game. And what is it? What is it? Well, it's a story about the coming out and the discovery that your sister is a lesbian and that your parents have been having a rocky time in their relationship. Okay, that's the game. That's literally all it is. There's no horror element. There's nothing of the sort. Uh, and the interesting thing is the way it's interesting is that essentially the way the feminist author wants you to sinisterly, become attached to Mad Max because she knows that's not what the film is about. It's what the authors wanted you to do with Gone Home. They wanted you at the end of the game to say, oh, she's a lesbian. Well, I'm so thankful that she found the love of her life and she's run off. I'm so thankful that my parents are going to their, I think it was like a Bible camp or something where they're getting their relationship patched up, and they're going to be home tomorrow. So I'm glad that everything is fine, everything is as it should be, and I'm so thankful about my sister that she's finally found her place with her love. That's what they want you to do. They want you to celebrate to that GLBT message, and this is not a topic of pro GLBT or not really, but this is a topic of free discussion and free ideas, because SJWs are pushing a narrative. They want you, and GLBT positivity, I guess you want to call it that, is absolutely mandatory for them. You are not allowed to disagree. It doesn't matter how mundane opposition you have. It's homophobic, right? That's what they want to keep telling you. And I think that's really a travesty. And because this was before Gamergate, we actually saw how the opposition to this radical message of, you will be thankful that she's found the love of her life, it was danced around, because no one wanted to directly come out and say, well, I don't really like being told that I'm supposed to feel good about my sister falling in love with a woman, or anything of that nature. I mean, for God's sakes, she does ransack the house to steal shit so that she can go live in a car with her lover, completely dodge that awesome scholarship she got, all of it. And, instead, people want to talk about, well, the game's 3 minutes. Well, the game's a walking simulator. Well, yeah, the game has nice graphics, but that's all there is. Maybe if you're charitable, you'll say that there are some interesting interactions that you can come across in the house. But nobody wanted to take up the mantle of, besides all those criticisms of the game, which are valid criticisms, obviously. No one wanted to say, yeah, and on top of that, I don't like how I was deceived into buying a product that was specifically trying to deliver a GLBT positivity message. I mean, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with saying that? It's false advertising. So it really bothers me that this was prior to Gamergate, so people were unclear on where they stood politically. People I don't think really understood that how far the progressives and the SJWs have infected the industry to that you are not allowed to disagree with whatever message they want to push. And if you disagree with them, you are the enemy, and they will brand you as such. They will destroy you. And these are people that love to destroy the opposition. And the reason the SJWs and the journalists, especially Kotaku, my God, what a shithole that place is. At least it was. Uh, they knew that their audience would not want to address it. They knew you would be too scared to. I think, though, now with Gamergate, um, in the efforts of preserving free speech against corrupt games journalists, we need to be willing to come together and push back and say, look, I might be a very staunch GLBT activist, but I can acknowledge that there are clearly people in society that don't view things the way I do, that maybe they don't want to, and that's perfectly okay. Their voice deserves to be heard just as much as mine is. And if games can be made which are specifically to push my message, like what I want, like my own personal opinion, even though I don't think games should be about delivering a political message. But if that's the direction that some developers want to take, it should be perfectly acceptable and given the same adequate coverage for the opposition. Put your money where your mouth is. If you are a GLBT activist and you're a developer, that's perfectly fine. Make what you want. But you do not have the right to tell other developers and other artists and other consumers that that not liking your product based on its political message is hateful. Okay, because that in itself is hate. That in itself is bigotry. Trying to control that narrative and say that anyone who is not with me is absolutely against me and they're a heretic and should be destroyed. So, you know, I was just thinking about SJWs in the industry and Gone Home being sort of the first overt wound in games journalism, where we saw across all boards that you're not allowed to disagree with this. And then it got worse, you know. That was when it went from Gone Home winning awards, for God's sake, for nothing, all because of the political message that it put out. And then we see you get the slew of articles about, oh, look at all these new female protagonists. Oh, you know, but some of those female protagonists are bad. We shouldn't even like some of these old female protagonists because they're not up to snuff. They're not up to the modern political standard. So I think it's disingenuous to say that Gamergate is or should be limited to corruption in journalism. I think it should be more. I think that we have an opportunity to really be libertarian about this and really restore freedoms and liberties that people enjoy, even if you disagree with them. Look, I'm Catholic. I disagree with atheists. I'm reactionary. I disagree with progressives. And no one, at least from my camp, or that I've seen in Gamergate, has been saying, look, you progressives, you atheists, you guys are not allowed to push your message, right? But they're saying is that if my camp, our camp, whatever you want to think about it as, is not allowed to push their message, they should have just that right as well. And it should be treated with just as much respect. You know, I'm sorry that games have become political. When we grew growing up, games were not political. They were about fun. They were about enjoyment. They were about fantasies and being these characters and loving life and making fictional friends and, you know, going on a great quest to save the princess. As technology has advanced and evolved, those stories have gotten more complex, and I think that's a good thing. It allows you to go from your princesses in another castle to Game of Thrones, you know, and that's a good thing. But something that we've lost is, as people are able to now start pushing politics in their work and have it be recognizably political, I think we need to respect that it needs to be done in a just and proper manner. So, you know, if you want to push politics, that's your right. It's your product. It's your piece of art. You know, if games are our piece of art or not, that's not this discussion. But I just think that, you know, I'm rambling now, but everyone should have their say. Everyone should have their opinions be heard, and disagreement is fine. Bigotry is not. Especially how they're using it to control the industry, to control and squelch out opposition, like Mad Max and Gone Home and Sisquisition. It's sad. And I wish gaming could be about fun and stories and people coming together, but SJWs don't want it to be. So they want it to be all about them and their world. They don't even fucking play games, man. They hate that you do. So I'll leave it there. Give me your thoughts. Take care of yourself.